Namaste. In verse 6 of the 6th chapter, Krishna says, for him whose lower egoic self has been conquered by the higher soul self, that self is the friend of his lower self. The true self, however, is not friendly to the false self, and in many ways is its enemy. Well, that's a very interesting statement. You should love people, but you should not love what they do. God loves us, but he does not love our delusions. We're the friend of not only our lower self, in the sense that we want to help this. We're many people in one. This is why the Mahabharata speaks of all this huge population, but they're all of one person. All our qualities, each one is a different citizen. And so we need to love that person, that nation. But we know that there are people in that nation who are trying to undermine it, to destroy it. They're traitors, they're all sorts of things. We know that in this self, there are many qualities that we don't like. But we can't lift that lower self, and this is the important teaching here. We can't lift ourselves if we hate ourselves. We can only lift ourselves if there is a love for our desire to advance spiritually. So many people, well, there was a saying that somebody in America used to affirm with her audiences, I love myself just the way I am. What absolute nonsense. I am good things and also bad things. Do I want to love the bad things? Krishna is saying very clearly, you should love only the good. You are the enemy of that part of yourself, which is not the friend to yourself. You must not only try to uplift and cure these lower qualities, but understand that the way to do it is by loving their potential for goodness. You have to love your own potential. Everybody is potentially a Christ. Everybody is potentially a Krishna. Everybody is potentially God, because that's his reality. And that part of us we should love. And if we have a tendency, for example, to drink heavily, we should not love that tendency, but we should love that part of that tendency that is aspiring upward. What is that particular tendency? The wish to escape pain is a part of it. The thought of numbness bringing happiness, which it doesn't. Nonetheless, there is that wish to escape pain in some way. That part we should love. I remember this story of a man I met. I never met him again, but he was a disciple of my guru. And he had been an alcoholic. And when he met my guru, he became completely converted. And he gave up everything, but he couldn't give up drink, and he wanted to take initiation. And his friend said to him, well, how can you dare take initiation? Here you are, an alcoholic, a drunk. And he said, well, I can't help that part of me, but at least I can help that part of me which wants to do a good thing. And so he would literally sit in his meditation with his kriyamala, counting a number of kriyas in one hand, and a glass or a bottle of whiskey in his left hand. And every now and then, after a few kriyas, and he kept that up for some time because he couldn't help it. But in time, the joy that he got from the Kriya and the dispassion and detachment and so on led him to say finally, well, I don't need this drink anymore. He gave it up and never wanted it again. So what we must understand that is if we can reach a point where we have a chance to compare a lower pleasure with a higher pleasure, naturally we'll choose the higher. So you won't help your lower self by just hating it, telling yourself you're no good, and so on. Like that time when I was working to overcome smoking. I was a young man of 21, and I had decided that I wanted to be a hermit and seek God, and smoking was an obstacle. I would need money for cigarettes, and it seemed to be a thing that would keep reminding me of my body. It just seemed like something I ought to give up. But I couldn't do it because there was this strong habit to. And so every time I would quit, I would go back to it. And again, I would try and fail. And I told myself, I have not yet succeeded. I didn't tell myself I have failed. Now this is how you can be a friend to yourself. Don't hate your lower qualities. After a year of this, my higher self became strong enough to say, well, I don't want to smoke anymore, and I never did since then, never have. It was by telling myself I haven't yet succeeded. It would not have worked if I had told myself, I failed again, damn it, I'm always failing, I'm no good. That would not help. You must always have faith in yourself, and you must always address your lower self. And remember again, you are many, many, many individuals in one body. Each little quality that you have is one trait, and that one trait represents one citizen in your own country on this great planet Earth. There are as many countries on this planet as there are human beings. Those are the real countries, in fact. We all have to deal with ourselves. The neighbors are not that important, except as objectifications of things that you need to learn. If there's a neighbor whom you don't like, it means you have something to overcome in yourself. If there's a quality in somebody else that you like, it means that's something that you respond to, vibrate with. So work on it, try to develop it in yourself. If there is something that you dislike in yourself, or something dislike in a neighbor, it's something that you have in yourself to overcome. So neighbors are good in this way, the country is good in this way. When you see the many different people acting in different ways and then noticing that this action leads to suffering, this kind of action leads to happiness, it's good to live in society. It's much better even to live in small communities like Ananda, where for many years you see the same people, live with the same people, make friends with them, and you see that those people who acted in certain ways, they didn't find what they wanted. Those people who acted in better ways found what they wanted. So many times other people can help you to find a shortcut, that through the right action that you see leading to happiness in some, you don't have to learn that lesson yourself, and you find that living with good people, living with idealistic people is a great help spiritually. This is why I've urged people to join communities, form communities. Ananda is one example of something I would like to see become worldwide. Many different communities, spiritual communities. They will help to uplift the whole world. But finally, that whole world comes to you and your qualities. And if you have this quality of wanting something that is to your detriment, then you in your higher self should not love that quality. But what can you love in that person? He says, is the friend of the good in those people. He's the friend of all. You should befriend your whole nation. You should see goodness in all, because you see that in every quality there is still two aspects to them. In Dvaita there, or in any, let us say you're standing in the sunshine. Toward the sun, you're in light. The backside of you is in shadows. So turn toward the light, turn toward the sun, turn toward bliss, turn toward God. So that is the part of everybody that you should love. You see somebody who is extremely jealous. Well, jealousy is not a good quality. But what makes him jealous? The fact that he at least has some love there, or he wouldn't be jealous. So emphasize that positive side. Always, with every negative quality that you have, if you befriend the positive side of that quality, you will help it to rise. So what are the positive sides? Well, being a murderer is certainly not, I don't see anything positive about killing other people. Worse than murder, however, is suicide. Because murder is trying to kill somebody else, but suicide is trying to kill your own center of reality. Trying to enter, it's a worse sin than murder. And it can take a long time to get out of. Well, but the thing is that in a murder even, he's trying to get rid of something he doesn't like. This is why in the path of renunciation, there has to be renunciation. Renunciation is sort of a creeping backwards. Renouncing what you do is you repent, or you creep back. That comes from the Latin. You renounce those things which involve you in Maya in order to come back. But without the positive side of renunciation, then there is only rejection, which in itself is negative. So renunciation should not be based only on overcoming desires for liquor, for attachments, for things, for wealth, etc., etc. True renunciation must also have its positive side. This is why in our Naya Swami order, I have emphasized that, yes, of course there has to be, it's understood you've got to get rid of desires and attachments, but you have to turn it in a positive way. You have to direct it upward. And so you have to embrace samadhi. You have to embrace infinity as opposed to ego. And so the positive side is not renunciation, it's embracing. It's you want to know God, you want to know truth, you want to know your higher self. So this is the upward part of it. Always seek in everything the upward part of that particular tendency. What is the upward part of sex? Love? Yes, of course, it should be that. If it isn't, it's a grosser thing. But then, if you have that love, you come to understand that the sexual experience doesn't give you that love. It takes away from it. People after sex turn away. You have to find that part of that. Every action it has its positive and its negative. Befriend the positive side. The need to hold other people is really the soul's desire to feel the touch of the entire universe. So the negative side of that touch instinct is wanting to touch it and feel it yourself. The positive side is to withdraw from that and to understand that I am in all atoms everywhere. So everything has its good and its bad side. But the good side is always that part which draws backward, not that part which goes outward. There are good actions, bad actions, but still if they're going outward, what you need to do is gradually wean your inclinations from outward expression, outward service, outward helping, and so on, gradually backward to understanding that the real power to help other people is not your own. It is something that flows through you. And the more you feel it flowing through you, the more you feel to turn toward that inner side. Now there again, I feel this dilemma in my own self, because I have this tendency to want to go inward and just think about God and be with Him. But I can't help wanting to help other people. So I have to take that as a positive thing. Never try to impose my ideas on other people. Never try to convert other people to my ideas. Learn to do it in a spiritual way so that I feel that God is doing this and offering. So I try to teach in such a way as to offer people what little I know, but not to try to force them to it. I try to reason in such a way, I try to reason for them so that they will see that this is the right thing for them. Like that time in Shimla many years ago in 1959, I was invited to a men's college there, and they had just signed a petition in blood about the Chinese incursions, and the principal was very worried that I would not be well received by these people getting up and talking about yoga and the peace that you achieve through yoga. So I talked to those students where they were, and I tried to get them and where their interests were. I tried to get that. Then I tried to lead them gradually from that to the thought of yoga, to the thought that if you are peaceful in yourself, then you can change this tendency that is in man to destroy and hurt and so on. And so bit by bit I brought them to my teachings, which I then shared, and afterwards they wouldn't let me go. I finally, after about an hour of questioning, had to say, well, you better get your buses to go back to your villages because they're leaving very soon. But this is the thing. Always think when you're doing something for other people, think of that you are in them, that your needs are, that you're helping their needs, not your needs. Always in everything you do, look at your lower self and see its positive side. I remember one time when I first met my guru. Before I met him, I met his most advanced disciple, and I had this sort of church rejecting kind of idea. And this disciple turned out to be Sister Ganamata, who was his most advanced disciple. And my first thought of her was, oh, this is just another church that attracts these little old ladies who are always sort of getting in the way of any common sense and so on. I had a very unflattering opinion of her just because she was old and she was in a spiritual environment. It was totally a conditioned response. And I was very upset by her. But on the bus up to Hollywood to meet him where he was, I suddenly remember seeing her eyes. I remember suddenly seeing her eyes. And I realized there was a lot of wisdom there. And I asked her to forgive me for having judged her wrong. It was at that moment that I knew I would be accepted. But I tried to tell Master this sometime. And he said, why do you talk about negative things? Forget about it. And I said, do you think I'm negative, sir? I would like to overcome it. He said, no, there's a lot of positive qualities in you, but there's also this side you must work on. So whatever negativity you have, get rid of it. It is that dark side. That's not the side to befriend. Always try to see the positive side. There's a positive side to everything. Yeah, you couldn't show me anything to which there would not be a positive side. Even in nature, I mentioned this recently, that when you are poisoned by some plant, you eat some poisonous plant, there is another plant near it which will be the antidote. It will always grow there. This is what the American Red Indians used to say. And I think it must be true, because I've seen that wherever there is a negative part of Dvaita, there's always the positive side. So always seek that side that is facing the sun. Always seek that side which you can befriend and lift, not that side which will bring you down into Maya. Joy to you.